Okay, morning everyone. Thank you very much for joining us again for our 6th show and tell. On the next slide, as we did last time and had before, questions and answers are on the Slido link, which went round with the invitation. So if you want to pop anything in there as we go along, and then we'll cover them all off at the end. So I think it's a quick roundup of what we've been, or why we're here. So we have been funded to look at developing an alternative offering to local planning authorities and case officers and managers to process planning applications. And we've taken very much a user-centred approach to that. So it's appropriate to users, but also relevant to all local authorities. What have we been doing in the last sprint? What are we doing in the last sprint? So we've, as I say, more testing and iterating on the development and the system itself. We've had more research sessions, but importantly, we've been speaking with the team behind the London Development Database and the Planning Portal team as well. We started developing the document management functionality, and we've integrated with, integrating with gov.uk Notify. And if you're not aware of what that is, it's just a government standard approach to consulting and sending out text messages, emails, and letters. And I think Evangelos will cover that later. But just hand over to Michelle to talk about design and research.
Thanks, Jack. So through this sprint, we've continued to iterate our designs and prototypes using the gov.uk prototyping kit. The main iterations we have made are to the home screen and how managers can give feedback and make corrections, so officers might want to review their assessment. We've also prototyped a skeleton journey for assessing full household planning permission applications. And to do that, we had to do a bit more research. We needed to find out a little bit more about how conditions can be applied to decision notices for full applications, and also what happens on site visits. To do this, we spoke to Southwark Council and Coventry Council to get a bit of that background research. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the changes we made was on the application list. So this is the first page that an officer will see after they've logged into BOPS. And it basically shows all of the householder applications that need to be assessed or are in progress. One of the issues, and something that confused pretty much every user we spoke to, was that they are used to seeing applications that have just been allocated to them. So our kind of list was showing everything, including applications that were in progress that other colleagues were working on. We heard that this was confusing, and we also felt that over time this list would be very long. So we've simplified it. Now an officer will only see the applications that they're working on, as well as any that haven't been started. And when they start that application, it will be assigned to them. If somebody else starts it, it will disappear from their list. Next slide, please. Officers also told us that after they'd made a recommendation and submitted it to their manager, they want to be able to kind of check when they made that submission, when they sent that recommendation over. The reason for this was, one, it allows them to check if they're hitting their targets, but it also, I guess, gives them kind of extra confirmation that they've done their bit and sent it to their manager. So what we've done is we've added the recommendation date onto the awaiting determination tab. And to allow enough space for that in this table, we've removed the consultation end date and responses. That will still stay on the first screen, but it isn't relevant as much for officers once they've already made their recommendation. Next slide, please. And we've also simplified the journey for managers. So previously, managers, we tried to structure it a bit more so managers could review an application and then give feedback about specific parts of it. However, This actually confused managers. It wasn't helpful. So to begin with, we're just going to have a simple free text box where a manager can give feedback. This is only to the officer and not to the applicants. And then when BOPS is being used, we will be able to kind of keep an eye on this and see, are there any kind of common types of feedback that we could potentially allow managers to tick so they don't have to write it each time. But for our MVP, we're starting with this simple solution. And we've also made the alert that officers see a little bit more prominent. This is this red box on the, at the top here. Previously it was blue, nobody saw it. So we've made it stand out a bit more, and we're going to test that and see if that's a bit easier. Next slide, please. And as I said at the start, we've now started to develop the prototype for assessing full applications. So you've got the task list on that side, which is just for permitted development. It's quite simple. At its core, an officer needs to review the application and the proposal, check against the documents and the drawings that the applicant submitted, and then make a recommendation. However, with full householder planning permission, the assessment requires quite a few more steps. They need to look at the impact on neighbours and the impact that the proposal will also have on local design and heritage. In addition to that, there's site visits, consultation, and also adding conditions. So there's quite a lot, it's a lot more complicated than permitted development. We've developed this kind of skeleton with all of the steps we think are required. However, we're going to be doing a lot more testing of this prototype to kind of fill in what some of those screens need in terms of functionality. And it's likely it will change quite a bit. But we're just at the start now, and we'll be testing that this sprint. Next slide, please. So to help us to kind of come up with that prototype, we just needed to find a few more things out. One was around conditions. So we found out that with householder planning permission, there were 3 common conditions that are added to decision notices. One is around the time frame for when work needs to begin, usually within 3 years. Another is building materials, that the applicant basically build with the materials they have provided in their application, or that they need to supply the materials before work commences, and drawing numbers. And these can be seen here in this decision notice from Southwark. However, there might also be local considerations as well that are specific to just one council. So an example is we did some research and we spoke to a council based in a very rural area. And in their area, there's a river that causes a lot of problems with drainage. So they have a condition on pretty much all applications that relate to drainage. So we need to make sure that BOPS is flexible enough to allow officers to easily add the common conditions, but also add those that are specific to their area. And one other thing that we found out about, which we hadn't really heard much about previously in Alpha, was that as well as conditions, informatives need to be added to decision notices. So informatives are not enforceable under planning policy, and that's how they're different to conditions, but they kind of act as guidance and additional advice for the applicant. So an example that we heard about is that as part of a proposal, an applicant might need to remove a tree that's on their property. Under planning policy, that might not be a problem, the proposal can go ahead. However, the council might advise that the applicant looks at local environmental or national environmental policies about removing that kind of tree. There might be guidance that that tree shouldn't be removed, for example, in spring, because it could harm local wildlife. So it's kind of extra guidance. And again, BOPS needs to be flexible enough to allow officers to add that in when they need to. Next slide, please. And then also site visits. So this is something that we haven't really had to think about too much with simple permitted development applications. But we did hear about this in Alpha as well, how officers will generally do several site visits on the same day. They will plan them, you know, if you're in one area, you may as well cover a few off. And whilst they're on site visits, they will generally take photos and make notes. And they might also check that the right people have been consulted as well, and make sure nobody's been missed off, you know, a particular neighbour, for example. However, one of the problems is it's really time consuming. When they get back to the office, you know, they have to email the notes and photos to themselves, they rename them, and then they upload them. So we want to think about how can we reduce that admin burden. But as well as this, we need to do some more research to understand, do we need to guide officers when they're on site visits? So a very simple MVP could just be that an officer can take some notes and add some photos, but do we need to kind of prompt them within BOPS about things they need to look out for? And one last thing that we also then need to think about is, after they've been on a site visit and they go back to do the assessments, how and when do they need to refer to those kind of notes and photos they took? And how can we make sure we surface them in BOPS at the right moment? Next, please. And then one other thing that we did during this sprint was to speak to the London Development Database team and also to Planning Portal. With London Development Database, they collect data about planning applications in the capital, and BOPS is already providing a kind of simple API, which we might add more data to later on. So we just kind of wanted to understand what types of data they need and what data we have that might be useful for them. And we've also started discussion with Planning Portal as well. They've shared their data schema with us, and it's something we're going to have a look at because we're interested in exploring how we might potentially be able to take applications from Planning Portal as well, so they can be assessed in BOPS in future. And next slide, please. Now I'll hand over to Evangelos.
So right now I'm going to do a service demo with the gov.uk Notify. As you can see, this is the main screen that the manager will see when they log into the application. This is one planning application that, as you can see, it has already been reviewed, and right now is ready to submit the recommendation, which is this decision notice. And by just clicking the button determine application, the applicant will receive an email with the decision notice template. So by clicking this button, I would expect to receive an email. Click it. You also get a lovely flash notice that the decision notice has been sent to the applicant. And as you can see here, I'm getting an email with the title saying that it has been granted, and it has been sent by the back office planning system notification email. You can see that there is nice branding of Southwark Council, and this is the template of the decision notice, which it has applicant name, date of issues, the address. And another thing that I would like to mention is that any data that they are here, they are all fake data. They are not real data. And now let's go back to presentation. I will hand over to Tom.
Thank you. So just a quick update from me about penetration testing. So as we get ready to make the feature functionality around permitted development available to our partner councils, we obviously need to make sure that the application we built is secure. So in the next sprint, we'll be working with a security firm to run penetration tests on the site. They'll give us a report with any recommendations we need to address, and then we'll be running a follow-up penetration test once we've completed full household applications, and then probably another one after that to kind of check on the recommendations from that. So as we continue to deliver more functionality to our partners, we'll continue to run pen tests and just make sure what we're building is actually secure. So that update from me. Back to Jack.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so next sprint, next 2 weeks. So we'll finish off developing the MVP document management feature. We will add, you'll have seen in previous show and tells, the questions and answers from the applicant. So we're going to add policy references as links on those screens. We'll start developing the manager review and amendment journey, but then we'll also start testing the journey for full applications going through BOPS. Yep, links. So it should all have been in the invitation, but all of our past show and tells, sprint notes, and a broader piece on the project are all found on our website, which is bops.digital, and there's links to the prototype, so you can have a look and have a play around as well. I think that's it. And if there are any questions,
none so far.
all right, we'll give you 10 seconds.
If any questions come in later as well, we can always follow up.
That's it then. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again back here in 2 weeks.